as Anne mentioned, my name is Stacey Acquaro. I'm from Stony Brook University, which is located in New York, about 60 miles east of Manhattan, on a very large island near beach, all surrounded by beaches. And I'll talk a little bit about the university, but obviously we're here to talk about the importance of a personal statement. I just want to mention two things. If at any time you can't hear me or see the presentation, certainly, interrupt and let me know. I also took out a lot of the glitz and glam, I would call, of a presentation, because sometimes when I'm doing webinars overseas, it often flash and high resolution JPEGs often don't get seen very well. So it doesn't always look as pretty as sometimes if I'm doing it in person, but the most important is the information coming through as well. So again, just a little bit about Stony Brook. We're celebrating actually our 60th anniversary, which is actually a really young university, but we've actually established ourselves as one of America's and the world's most dynamic public universities. We're ranked in the top 1% of universities across the world and in the top 100 of national research universities in the country. We have Nobel laureates, grants and fellows, Guggenheim fellows, and grant winners. We're among the elite Association of American Universities, and we're ranked one of the 61 best research institutions in North America. We offer 200 academic majors, minors, and programs, and we have about 25,000 students on campus. I can certainly also talk about, at the end, if there's time for questions and you have specific questions to Stony Brook, as well as what we're going to talk about in terms of the college essay, please feel free to ask. But really, the college essay is the largest focus is to showcase who you are as a person, as a student, and why you would be a good fit for the college or university that you are applying to. It's to give a window to the person or the committee reading the essay who you are, and really needs to highlight that. So whether you're applying through the Common Application, which has a number of questions that you can choose from, or specific universities have very specific questions that you might have to choose from, you should choose a topic that highlights who you are. Not choosing a topic based on just because you think that that is going to be the most exciting topic. Everything that you choose should be around who you are. The next biggest thing is to create a thesis or a main argument. Just like you were writing a paper for an assignment in school, whether it's history or on something in literature, your topic essay should have a thesis, a main statement, a main argument. When I'm presenting this in public, I normally ask for a show of hands. How many times when you're doing a school research paper or an essay that you write it once and then hand it in? And I probably get about half of my students that I'm presenting to say, yes, I wrote my paper, I proofread it for maybe some spelling and grammar errors, and then I handed it in. However, certainly when you get to college, and even when you get, when you're in your job, rewriting anything, whether it's this presentation that I'm doing or a research paper that I have to write or any kind of task or assignment, is necessary to sometimes write many drafts. And you should be prepared to write a few essays and several drafts of that essay. So those of you who are in your senior 3 year and ready to sort of write these essays, you probably want to start beginning to do that now and beginning to write some of those drafts. The other thing we like to tell students is to be yourself. And that sort of goes back with, highlighting who you are. Colleges are looking for who is going to be a good fit to the university. So it is often that we receive essays that talk about things that interest the student, which very well might be the case, but perhaps things that don't match with what is offered here at the university at Stony Brook. So if, for example, we offer 200 academic majors. One of them, however, is not architecture. If you're going to write an essay about how when you were a kid, you played a lot with Legos or an erector set, and that inspired you to look into the field of construction and architecture, that's clearly not going to be someone who's a good fit for Stony Brook. So you need to be true to yourself and do a little bit of research about what the school has to offer. If you see a club or organization at the university that you've been involved in high school, and now you have that same kind of ways to get involved at the university level, that's a great tie-in to say that you might be a great fit here. Within that essay, you should share your personal stories. So whatever that topic is, how is it exactly relating to you? Not relating to a quote of somebody famous or something along those. Share something that actually has happened to you in the recent years. You only have a short sort of time frame of how to present this information. You don't want to write a 4, 5, 6 page essay. It's generally 1 to 2 pages long at most. So it's a lot of information you need to convey in a short amount of time. So we don't want you to repeat anything that's on your application. A lot of times you hand in an activities resume or you're listing your classes. You don't need to repeat things that have already been presented in your application in another way. And that sort of goes along with the next one, is don't try and talk about everything. You want to be clear and concise, and that goes back to sort of the main argument and the thesis. You want to make sure you are focused on what the topic is. If you have other things to explain, that is your time on the application for an activity sheet, or there's sort of some other areas where there are explanations for maybe you did that in a class and you want to make a little note. You can also always email the admissions office of the universities you're applying to for any kind of information. The next one is a really great one. And while, of course, it's more widely known here in the U.S., we're starting to see it outside of the U.S. in many countries. And we all know that parents might help proofread an application or an essay and give an opinion. But I'm a parent myself. It's very easy to give advice that then becomes their own voice and not your voice. So you want to make sure you are really keeping your own perspective and your own voice to the essay. Say what you mean to say is also another big one. And so again, we talked about sort of how there's a restricted time or length of the essay, and there's not a lot of time for what I call fluff. And so you want to get right to the point and say what you have to say. One of the big items that I always remind students is follow instructions. So if the question, and this goes for the entire application process, But if the instructions have a word limit, if it has a page limit, if it has, a very specific topic, if it asks you to include references or bibliography, make sure you are following the instructions. I give the example not on a college essay, but when I was in college, I had to create an essay, and there was instructions on how to hand in that paper, that essay, and it was supposed to be 5 pages and a couple other requirements. And I didn't follow one of the instructions. I think I had maybe 7 pages instead of 5 pages. And just because I did not follow those instructions, I failed the paper. And that was my sort of introduction to college life and how serious those kinds of instructions are. Now, that's not to say that you would or wouldn't get admitted to a university. However, when highly selective universities are looking at applications and have somebody with 5 applications with the same test scores and grades and highly selective curriculums that they've come through their high school and have only one of them to choose, they start picking and being a little more nitpicky on that. So next, we talk about grasping a reader in the first few sentences. At Stony Brook this year, we received 35,000 applications for a class of about 2,900 students. In that was probably close to 5,000 international applications for less than 500 students, international students. There's 2 to 3 admissions counselors that read 5,000 international applications, all while also recruiting in your various countries. So we have a finite time to read those applications. The deadline is January 15th, and we have to let you know by April 1 that what the decision is. So we need to read through those applications as thoroughly as possible, and we do. Believe me, we have many of late nights here doing so. But we really, really encourage students to grasp the reader in the first few sentences and make sure you have your introduction focused. So what I always do, going back to what we talked about, sort of that main idea, is have a parent, a teacher, a school counselor, any kind of mentor read your introduction and ask them to tell you what the main idea is. So if you know your main idea is that you want to let the admissions office know that you volunteered at your local at a local shelter, and that impacted you to get involved in helping do some community work and psychology and social services, you should be able, the person who's reading and sort of proofreading your essay for you should be able to tell you exactly what the main idea is that you had. So it's important to find somebody who can read over your essay and be able to tell you that, not just read it for sort of some English grammar and spelling and things like that. Another area that we like to talk about is to sort of, you're expressing yourself and you're stating your opinion, but you want to avoid being too risky or controversial. You have to remember that sort of average day-to-day people are reading your application and you don't know anything about them. You don't know if they, what religion they might be, what political party they might belong to. So it's easy to to be opinionated about a topic and feel very strongly against something, but you want to do it without making sure you wouldn't personally insult somebody. This is sort of one of my favorite pieces of advice, and that is, it's okay to write your topic and your essay on something that we would consider maybe a mundane experience. Some people feel that they have to write their essay on a personal experience that might be super significant. A lot of people choose to write about anywhere from some great research that they were involved in, or some leadership experience, or something very impactful that happened in their family. And at the end of the day, if you had an experience with perhaps just one day after school with a teacher talking about a book, or talking about, or going over a math or science experiment, and that made you then look into studying biology because of that experiment, that's sort of what got you to that place. And if it had such an impact on your life, then it is the most significant thing to write about. It could be work experience as well. So definitely, you know, in these cases, think about all of those experiences. Don't just feel that other people have these magnetic and magnificent experiences and you might not have something like that. We want to know about you, so your everyday life and what impacts you, and that's generally what that is. Here in the US, we use a word called bragging, which is sort of talking a lot about yourself. And we like to boast our accomplishments and talk about some great things we've done. But you should do it in a way where you're showing what you've learned and what you can do, than by just saying, you know, I'm a great fit for your university because I've done all of these things already. It should be, I'm a great fit for Stony Brook's engineering program because I've been in the computer science club, or I've taken these classes and have learned these kinds of information. So sort of make sure you turn it into how much you've learned from that accomplishment. And that sort of goes in a generic way as well, meaning we like to see what you would bring to the university. How would you be a good fit here? Why would you be a good fit here? So instead of saying, I'm interested in coming to Stony Brook University so I can go on to graduate school and get a good job and make a lot of money, say, you know, I want to come to Stony Brook University and I see that it has amazing labs and I know that I am going to learn from that experience and then hopefully get paired up with a faculty member to do research so I can use it to help, you know, maybe solve pollution issues or climate control or something, whatever sort of interests you in that field that you're getting to talk about. So lastly, just as I recommended to you to have somebody read the introduction and sort of give feedback on what your main thesis is, you're going to want someone to read the entire thing once it is done and ask for criticism, not just from that introduction paragraph, but from the whole thing. So it's not just where my next one is proofread. Again, it is not just proofreading, but you want to make sure that all of your points have come across. So if you have sort of an outline of what those points are that you want to have come across, after they have read it, you should ask them pointed questions that will see if all of those areas that you want to come across have been accomplished in your essay. Proofread, proofread, proofread. and do not rely on spell check or Google Translate. It is so often that makes it sort of not a good way to flow if you're just relying on Google Translate. You should also have someone else proofread, and obviously this should be an English teacher or someone who you feel confident can really do an honest job of proofreading, not just contextually giving information. One of the things I recommend, not just to my international students, but to all students, I was given this advice in my senior year of college. I wish I would have had this advice in my freshman year of college, because I actually have terrible grammar in English grammar. It was not good in high school or in college. And it was realized to me that the reason why my grammar was not always great is that I read things as I say them, not necessarily as I have written them. And one of the ways to combat that is to read each sentence on its own, starting from the end of your essay. So if I'm reading through an essay, I'm quickly reading it from start to finish, and in my head, it sounds exactly as it should appropriately and grammatically correct sound. But if I'm reading each sentence individually from the end of the essay up to the front, to the beginning of the essay, you're then reading each sentence not in its appropriate organizational form, but in a way that you can read each sentence for structure and grammar. You obviously still need to read it beginning to end to make sure it organizationally sounds appropriate and runs smoothly. But specifically for your spelling and grammar, it is good to get into the habit, especially when English is not your first language and you're going to be having to go to college. It's a great way to really be proofreading and making sure that it's appropriate. One of the other things in your essays is be honest. The last thing you want to do is talk about something that actually did not happen to you, and then perhaps you get questioned on it in the future and realize that it's not something that happened. When you fill out an application at Stony Brook and everywhere else, you sort of check off that you have completed this application to the best of your knowledge and everything is truthful, etc. And when somebody is dishonest on an application, whether it's submitting false transcripts or test scores, or even an essay that was not your own, or something that was written that's not true, you can actually be disqualified for dishonesty. So it's not something you would want to do and start off with. Besides sort of the proofreading, is you want to be accurate in terms of your punctuation, your capitalization, slang words. This also refers to things, the name of the school you're applying to or the major offered at school. So obviously if you're using the Common application or the Coalition application, the essays are generic for multiple schools. And if you're putting in there, I'm so excited to apply to Stony Brook University, but then you send that to the University of Florida or vice versa, that always has really a negative tone on the admissions office reading that. Same thing as we talked about, and I'm so excited to study architecture at your university when the school doesn't even have that program. So really be careful on that side of proofreading. Don't overuse words like very or many. You know, I'm very excited to apply to Stony Brook. My senior year has been very challenging. There are many exciting things that are happening in my senior year. You only have, again, a short amount of time to sort of capture the reader and a limited amount of words. so you don't have to over-exaggerate that by using some of those words. I also remind students to be mindful of format and font. It's very easy when obviously typing your essay to have a format or font issue. So sort of make sure that that is all neat and appropriate. So I had talked about this earlier in the beginning, but to reinforce it, rewrite. Now that your essay has been completed, you've gotten your feedback, you've proofread it, you sometimes will need to go back and do more than one draft. What part needs to be elaborated? What needs to be made more clear? Does every sentence need to be in this essay? So as you're reading it, does that sentence support my main argument? Does this paragraph support my main argument? Go back and back to each sentence and each part in the essay and make sure that it doesn't need to be elaborated on. Is it clear? Is it making sense? Is it supporting my thesis? Is it, or can it be eliminated? Does it need to be reworked? So that is sort of all of my main points in terms of the importance and how to really tackle your college essay. I am going to open it up to questions in a few moments. I just want to take one moment. I talked a little bit about Stony Brook. I also just want to share with you that Stony Brook also offers a summer enrichment program. It's a 2-week academic and cultural program that provides high school students an opportunity to come here and study. You can do intensive English courses. We do introduction to the U.S. education, the U.S. admissions process and college search, as well as cultural experiences and social experiences. We go into the city. We go into the, go through a bit of Long Island. You stay in the residence halls. There's 3 meals a day. We do airport pickup and drop off. We also visit other universities. This past summer, we went to Columbia and Yale. You also will take classes, things like math, health sciences, marine and atmospheric sciences, engineering. This year, our program is July 15th through the 28th. It's $5,000. Here you can see in the city where we went to. We've gone to the Bronx Zoo, World Trade Center, United Nations. It changes a little bit each summer depending on availability. If you are interested in that, our website is stonybrook.edu/USA. You can also, you'll see here our email is enrollintl@stonybrook.edu. I answer those emails myself along with some of our students here. So if you have questions not only about the summer program, but about Stony Brook or about the college admissions process, that writing the essay, please feel free to personally email me. But at this time, I will open it up to questions from anyone.
Hello? Stacey? Hi, Stacey, can you hear me? Hello?
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I'm just going to try to get this the volume a little louder because I'm having a difficult time hearing you. Can you repeat that?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, that's great.
Okay. I had a question about Zinzanni, obviously. about the personal statement. I think a lot of times students have trouble really, thinking of a story, right? I think that's oftentimes difficult for them. Could you maybe give an example of, like, a real example of something of an essay or a story, to help students kind of more visualize, or understand what that means in terms of sort of sharing a story for you to understand the student better? Because, as you probably know, in international schools, this isn't the kind of essay they're used to writing. So we have to work with them a lot to get them to write this way, these personal narratives. But it helps them to have examples. So do you have anything that you could think of that really stuck out for you?
Sure, absolutely. And we do understand that it is not in the norm to share, just the culture in the U.S. is to sort of open up and share personal stories and anecdotes, whereas, the other parts of the world, it's very focused on something that has happened academically in school and focus on that. The two pieces of advice I can give is one, and I'll give a few examples. It has to come from you, and you have to feel comfortable writing it and doing it, or else it won't showcase who you are. So if it is something that, uncomfortable is okay. Part of writing an essay is sort of coming out of your comfort zone a little bit and showing who you are. But if it's something that's so hard for you to do, then that's probably not showing the best side of you. So a lot of our international students will write specifically about how perhaps a teacher or a mentor or a specific academic moment in their high school career might have impacted their decision to want to study in a particular major. So whether it's a classroom experiment, Stony Brook has several science programs and
I know. You guys hearing me okay? Hello, Stacey?
Hello?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Sorry, my computer. Yeah, my computer just went out a little bit. It was my totally technical error on my part, and lost you for a few seconds. Sorry about that. Probably when you were saying the most important things, you kind of went out for a little bit.
Repeat.
I don't know. We got to the part where you were talking about what typically international students write about. Can you? I don't know. Did you talk about a specific example? I don't know how far you got there.
I did. I'll just repeat it just in case anyone didn't hear me. But generally, what I say is it can range from, we have a lot of programs in the sciences and health science, engineering. So some students will be, specific that whether it's a class or a lab at a class or a relationship with a teacher that they had that sort of inspired them to want to study in that field, or it might even be an experience they had, at home, whether it's sort of, on a video game that piqued their interest or something along those lines. And that's sort of what I talked about, is it doesn't have to be this huge experience. We also have a lot of health professions majors here at Stony Brook, so we often get times somebody that's been inspired to study in the health professions world because a family member might have been sick, or they might have broken their leg and had a fabulous nurse or doctor or physical therapist that made them feel this way. They might read a newspaper, an American newspaper, and feel compelled to study business or some kind of social justice. So it really can talk about, whatever personal experience that might be. But you really want to make sure it's sort of within your comfort zone.
Okay. I think that's helpful to give them the context, because everyone's always thinking about the big story, and sometimes they don't necessarily have that, so that's okay.
Right. And that is totally okay. I often sometimes when reading applications will say all the time, like, everyone can't, you're only 17 years old. The rest of your life is yet to come, and all of these great things are yet to come. You can't possibly have all of these great things yet. They will happen, I promise, but you might not have had them, and that's okay. Look at whatever that could be, so small that just sort of, made that impact on you. And in particular, if you have a, what I call a dream school, and it certainly don't expect everyone, listening to this for it to be Stony Brook. What was it that piqued your interest? Was it something that you read on the website? How did you connect it to what you're thinking and what you're doing?
Great. We'd actually like to hear more about Stony Brook. Is there anything else that you can tell us about the admissions process, or?
Sure.
For example, from what I remember, like, are SATs required?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
That kind of stuff. Some of the basics, maybe, to help students.
Yep, absolutely. So at Stony Brook, like I said, we offer 200 different academic majors. Some of our more popular, as I've mentioned, are sciences, our engineering, our health sciences, but we do offer a vast number in the arts and the humanities, including music. Psychology is ranked in the top 10 of the country. We have, we do have English language programs here as well. Typically, our incoming class is generally a high B plus A average. Generally about our mean or our average GPA for this class that just started fall, it was a 93 GPA. For international students, we do not require the SAT. You can submit a TOEFL or an IELTS. However, we do have some majors within engineering and business that in order to get directly admitted to those majors, you must submit an SAT. Those majors are looking for highly, especially the engineering, very strong math scores, probably a 700 plus in the math. For business, we'll also be looking at the evidence-based reading portion, because for business, you must be placed into our Writing 101 course versus like an ESL course ahead of time. The essay and a letter of reference is, of course, required as well. I talked a little bit about perhaps some involvement that you might have been in, but it is not really a requirement like it is for U.S. students. We just know that at many high schools and in many countries, it's not as popular or not at all available. So we will really look at the school that you're applying from, the high school that you're attending, what kind of academics are offered there. We're going to look for a strong curriculum of courses that you've taken. If there are then activities that you could be involved in, perhaps getting involved in something. So, you know, however, it's not really as heavily emphasized as it might be for a U.S. citizen student, a student studying here in the U.S.
So I know there are some Brazilians that are at Stony Brook now. Do you have any? Do you know anything about their experiences or what their any? I don't know if you know any of them personally. Can you talk to their experience at all? Do you know?
Sure. I don't know of one offhand this year. In the past, I've certainly have had, we do have Brazilian students, and we do offer students from over 120 different countries. We're probably about 17 to 20% international on campus and extremely diverse in general. We're near New York City, so it's really a very, very diverse campus. We have over 400 clubs and organizations on campus that range anywhere from academic focus, social focus, cultural or religious focus as well. So we have a lot of students also involved in our International Student Association. They're probably one of the top clubs and organizations out of the 400. They often get recognized every year for their leadership, and we have student organization awards, and they're always getting recognized. It's a huge chapter here on campus. So our international students in general are highly involved. They do a lot of programming throughout the semester. They get involved in planning events for the weekends. So it's not just the university planning events for international students, but it's the international students planning events for other international students or for the university at large.
Great. Do a lot of people, is New York really a part of the social life, or is that, do students end up interning there? How?
Yeah.
Or moving there after school is, I guess, or what's the sort of the graduation route, would you say?
Sure, absolutely. So we are, like I said, about 60 miles east of New York City. So if your dream is to come to the United States and study in New York City or in a major city like New York, Boston, Stony Brook is not the place because it is over an hour outside of the city. However, we do have a train station on campus that takes you directly into the city. So many, many students on the weekends will go into the city for social activities, for even some academic experiences or cultural experiences. If you want to be in the city every day, Stony Brook is not the place for you. If there is, a concert or a lecture or some kind of social experience on a Wednesday night that you really, really want to go to, is that possible to leave campus and go? Absolutely. It's just not something you would do on a daily basis if you just wanted to walk the streets and just soak in that culture and, sit and have coffee in the park and things like that. It's just, not feasible like it would be if you were at a university within the city itself, where you're daily walking those streets. In terms of internships and work, absolutely. We have, not only in the local Long Island area, but many, many students will go into Manhattan for internship experience, whether that's during the academic year or like winter breaks or staying for the summer and doing so. Work, really, we have students who are able to get OPT or CPT, which is sort of an extension of your F1 visa for work and occupational training experience, and really internships. Our Career Center focuses on those opportunities, not just in New York City, but throughout the country and throughout the world. We really do have an amazing network on campus that will help students get placed into those opportunities, whether it's here in New York, whether they might want to spend the summer somewhere else in the U.S., or trying to find those opportunities maybe back at home as well.
Great. I think that's helpful. Also, some people just think New York's like one place, so it's good to clarify for some.
And New York is really, really big if you look at a map, but we are right off of the city. So between Long Island and the city, most New Yorkers from this area don't think of the rest of New York. That's just like a whole nother area.
Yeah.
But
you have the beaches. But you've got the beaches. We have the
beaches. Right? Exactly. Obviously you're here, unless you stay in the summers, you have a limited amount of time at the beach because it will get cold in New York in the winter and in the spring. So the beginning of the school year and the end of the school year will be nice for the beaches. But summer is great here on campus too. You actually can take classes and get ahead, or have an internship opportunity and stay on campus, and it's a little quieter, and it's really nice to stay sometimes for the summer too.
Great. Guys, I've muted you all, so if you want to ask a question, I'm going to unmute everybody. I've been asking a lot of questions. Does anyone want to ask any questions out loud, or type it in? You guys being shy tonight? It's all right. I understand. I know it's getting late. 9 o'clock our time. It's 8 o'clock your time, Stacey. So I really appreciate your time. I think that a lot of times people, we talk a lot about the personal statement, but until you hear someone from the university saying the same thing, they don't really listen. So it's very helpful. I really like your tips. I think the most important thing, remember guys, is keep your voice, right? I know a lot of people have help, or they may hire, consultants or something, and people think that they're so focused on making it perfect, right? And even perfect English, I don't think is necessary, right? I mean, you would allow a few, right, errors to go through that you knew were authentic.
Absolutely.
Right? It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be honest. Can't be terrible either, obvious. But so right. I think you guys, you should obviously have proper English. But if you make a few mistakes, like a few prepositional mistakes, it's not a big deal. I think what's important is that you're telling your story, using your voice, and I think that the authenticity is what most colleges want at the end of the day. If I could, summarize what you're trying to say for our who often are afraid, of really talking about who they are, right? Because they want to produce what you want, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So thank you again.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your time. This is going to be recorded and on our YouTube, so hopefully the rest of our students will watch it later on who couldn't make it tonight. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too now. Bye.
Bye.